Hey everyone, welcome to Mountain Beast Mysteries. In today's video, I wanted to quickly go over a very interesting subject, and that is the subject of giants in North America, and specifically the cannibal giants of North America. You'll hear stories of giants that have existed, in our continent for like hundreds and hundreds of years. There's a lot of stories of specific First Nations tribes where like the individuals were rather large, like abnormally large, very tall, like an upwards of 7 feet tall, which is crazy. It's very tall. I covered a story a little while ago about a group of these, Native Americans who were they were trying to track down these missing people from their village. There was, children and women that were taken, and it turned out that the people who took these women and children were actually Sasquatch. So you got this group of like abnormally large First Nations men going to find these people, only to like realize like, oh man, like it was a group of Sasquatch and they're even bigger than us. That's the story of the human Bigfoot war. I want to say it was in Oklahoma, but I could be wrong. I can't even remember now exactly where it happened. It was in the States a long time ago. But you also have the stories from northern Canada, like in the Northwest Territories and in the Yukon, like the Nahanni Valley, where there are these giant cannibalistic people, like First Nations people. They're almost like, they're more human-like, it seems, than Bigfoot-like, of course. But they're very aggressive. They are always in conflict with the other tribes around them, which is very interesting. And a lot of people say they're the people who are responsible for a lot of the, missing explorers and prospectors showing up with their heads gone. They call the Nahanni Valley the Headless Valley, and I've spoken about that numerous times on the channel here. So you have all those stories from northern Canada. Then there's lots of stories from the States. There will be these giant dirt mounds, like ancient mounds. And they would excavate them, and they would find the remains of what appear to be giants. They would find skeletons between 8 and 10 feet tall, which fits the proportions of a Sasquatch. Like a lot of Sasquatch reports tell of the creatures being in that 8 to 10 foot range, sometimes shorter, sometimes taller, obviously, but that's like the sweet spot. So there's a lot of stories like that. You'll hear legends of giant skeletons being dug up and unearthed, and then you'll hear that like the Smithsonian Museum was, in possession of these remains of these skeletons, and they're hiding them away, and they're trying to hide the truth about this race of giants that existed. You'll hear a lot of stuff like that, and you wonder, like, is there any truth to that? Like, who knows? Like, it would be interesting to see what kind of things are stashed away at the Smithsonian Museum. I know Ken Walker, the taxidermist here in Alberta, who I've interviewed multiple times, he used to do work for the Smithsonian. He used to do taxidermy work for them. And he always wondered, what kind of strange things do they have stashed away in their collections. But I think the most famous case of these giants in North America is probably the case of Lovelock Cave in Nevada. If you haven't heard of Lovelock Cave in Nevada, it is a cave that was discovered where apparently a race of red-haired cannibalistic giants who favored eating the thighs of other human beings. That's where they resided, was in this cave, and like the other tribes that were nearby did not like them at all, and actually exterminated them and killed them all, burnt them alive in their cave. That's what the story is. Is that true? Maybe, maybe not. A lot of remains were apparently actually excavated from Lovelock Cave, and the skeletons were abnormally large, so that is interesting. There was also lots of artifacts dug up as well. There were sandals that they used to wear, and apparently some of them were 15 inches long. So not only do you have like the height of a Sasquatch, you have the foot size of a Sasquatch. You hear like so many reports of tracks being in the neighborhood of 15 inches. That's like the average Sasquatch track, 15, 16 inches. So I'm not saying these people were Sasquatch. I'm just saying they are closely related as far as like physical dimensions go, right? And size. You know, a lot of people will say like there's Sasquatch, which are like the typical hairy giants we see roaming the woods or that we hear about. And there's other people that will say there's the forest people that are more like people-like, but they're also Sasquatch-like. Who knows? Like there could be a spectrum of like Sasquatch and these very primitive people, and like, you know, there could be anything in between. It seems that way. Like when you look at all these cases from different parts of North America, and when you like kind of string them all together and look, it's like there's so many different cases of like giant upright beings. It's so bizarre. And like, even, you know, of course you have the Nephilim, the stories of the Nephilim. You hear people talking about that a lot in the Bigfoot community. That's like a biblical, I guess, giant being. I think it stands for something like the fallen ones or fallen angels or something like that. I can't quite remember the lore behind the Nephilim. I haven't really looked into it too deeply. And I know in like ancient Greece there was legends and tales of giants, and, you know, of course, like in biblical times you have the story of David and Goliath. And Goliath was, you know, apparently a giant who was killed by David, who, you know, threw a rock at it with a sling. True? Who knows? We're not here to debate these old biblical stories. But you do have lots of stories throughout the ages like that, of these giant-like beings. Even in the book, The Epic of Gilgamesh, which is supposed to be one of the oldest, you know, fictional pieces of literature. Gilgamesh was apparently a giant being, like just a beast of a man. So as far back as we can see in like written literature, there are stories of giants. So there must be some credibility to that. There must have been a race of giants if it's documented so much all over the world. Now the question is, are they actually related to Sasquatch? Odds are probably not, but, you know, you wouldn't really know unless you had the skeleton of a Sasquatch and the skeleton of one of these giants and were able to compare them. And if there are remains stashed away in one of these museums, I mean, it'd be really cool to get a look at it. Apparently the skeletons from Lovelock Cave used to be on display at a local museum. And then this was like back, I think, in the 50s and 60s or whatever. I think that cave was discovered and excavated in like 1911 and continuously on throughout the years. But I did hear that some of the remains, like the skulls and stuff, were on display in a museum, and then out of nowhere, out of the blue, they were removed and hidden, and they would say like, no, like that never happened, these things weren't real. So it almost kind of reads like a cover-up, you know? Again, that's kind of just speculation, but it is odd that they did used to have these on display, and now they're like, what? Like, what are you talking about? There's no such thing as giants. So I wonder what the reasoning would be to cover up a race of giant humanoids, you know? Maybe it just really rubs up against the work of like scientists who've dedicated their life to, you know, ancient history. It kind of goes against what, you know, they put their life into. So they want to say that they didn't exist. They don't want to admit that their life's work is wrong. Could be anything like that. But it is cool to kind of wonder what used to exist back in those times, and what people were like, and what civilization was like. And, you know, I wish we had a time machine, but we just don't. But anyways, that's all I really wanted to talk about with this video, is just share thoughts about, you know, these cannibalistic giants. If you guys have any information, leave it down in the comments below. If you're looking to support Mountain Beast Mysteries, you can make a donation to the channel through our GoFundMe page. There's a link in the description for that. That's all I have. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on Mountain Beast Mysteries.